The Las Vegas Raiders, over the course of about 3 or 4 months in this offseason, completely changed how their outlook looks in terms of their coaching staff, in terms of their personnel on their roster. It all started with hiring Pete Carroll to be the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. They brought in guys like Chip Kelly to be the offensive coordinator and a lot of other guys like Joe Philbin, like Patrick Graham, and a lot of guys with a lot of experience to be coaches on this team. They also obviously traded for Geno Smith at the beginning of this offseason, back in somewhere in February, beginning of March. And only giving up a third-round pick for Geno Smith, who is a quality starting quarterback in today's NFL, and can help this team win more than 4 games like they did last year. Now, getting into the actual free agency for the Las Vegas Raiders, like I said, they traded for Geno Smith, they restructured Christian Wilkins, and they extended guys like Isaiah Polomeo, who has been a solid contributor as a safety for the Raiders for the last few years. Also extending Geno Smith, making him one of the higher paid players in the NFL and one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the NFL as well. And then as well as Max Crosby, who became one of the highest paid non-quarterbacks in NFL history this offseason. For the losses for the Las Vegas Raiders this year, I don't know if I overvalue some of the guys that they lost or if maybe they are good players and it's a bad sign that they lost these guys. Guys like Trayvon Merrick, Nate Hobbs, Robert Spillane, Marcus Epps, these are guys who have been players for the Las Vegas Raiders for, especially in cases of guys like Marcus Epps and Robert Spillane. These are guys that have been there for a while. And Nate Hobbs and Trayvon Merrick, these were two very young, very talented players in the secondary for the Las Vegas Raiders, where I think it just hurts to lose guys like that. I don't think you ever really want to lose guys that are young and talented, especially when you're bringing in a coaching staff that's really going to emphasize the joy of playing football, like Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. Even though Chip Kelly is an offensive coordinator, there's just going to be better vibes in this building than I think have been there in the past. And so it just is my opinion. I wouldn't want to lose guys like Merrick and Hobbs especially. Now, for their additions, they do a pretty good job of replacing the guys that they lost, even those guys that I mentioned in Merrick and Hobbs. They add safety Jeremy Chin, linebacker Landon Roberts, running back Raheem Mostert, cornerback Eric Stokes, and they re-sign a couple of guys, but nobody that's really, making major impacts. Malcolm Kuntz was a decent defensive end for them last year, so it was good for them to bring him back. But like I said, I think in terms of talent going out and talent coming in, I think Las Vegas stayed pretty neutral. I do like the additions of Landon Roberts, Leaky Fotu, and Eric Stokes, especially. I think these are 3 guys who have had, pretty important roles with their teams the last few years, and they've played pretty well. And I think even though Eric Stokes hasn't been a guy who's jumped off the page for the Green Bay Packers these last few seasons, he's always been a very consistent player for them, in my opinion. And even in the moments where he wasn't great, I think he was in position to make plays, and just sometimes things don't go your way. And now on to the draft for the Las Vegas Raiders. We're looking at a year with 9 total selections. Obviously could go up or down in terms of the amount of selections they have, but currently they have 9. They're in a position right now with the number 6 overall pick where they could get either the best wide receiver, the best running back, or one of the better, defenders available in this year's draft. They also probably have a good chance to get one of the best offensive linemen in this draft as well. They're in a situation, I believe, where it kind of has to be either running back offensively or it has to be in the secondary defensively. I think when you look at the offense, you have the quarterback in place, you have a tight end in Brock Bowers, you have a wide receiver in Jacoby Myers, and you have pretty much a full roster of guys that can contribute other than the running back. And I think you can say a similar story about the defense. I mean, on the defensive line, you have Max Crosby, you have Christian Wilkins, You have some good players on the defensive line. Linebacker is kind of thin. It's pretty much a Landon Roberts, Tommy Eichenberg, and a bunch of guys. And I think when you get to the secondary, though, that's when you kind of see a lack of depth. You have Jeremy Chin, you have Isaiah Polomeo, you have Eric Stokes. But, I mean, in the back end, you don't have much behind Chin and Isaiah Polomeo, other than Lonnie Johnson, which I don't know if that's really where you want to be. And even if it is, I think you could add a safety that is young and much more talented than some of the guys that they have currently. But corner, to me, is where I see the massive glaring hole. And I think there's been, especially now with Nate Hobbs leaving, and they also released Jack Jones a couple of weeks ago, I think this is the time to kind of address that position. And they might get pretty lucky. If somebody like Travis Hunter falls to them at number 6, it's probably not going to happen. But if it does, I think it's pretty easy to take Travis Hunter. If you have a guy like Will Johnson that's sitting there and you like him as a cornerback, I think that's a guy that, fits into a Pete Carroll defense pretty easily. You think about guys in the past that are in his similar height and weight range, where Will Johnson is 6'2", almost 200 pounds, and he's pretty fast. He's going to be a guy who's going to be a ball hawk. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to make plays in the running game. I think you look at Will Johnson as a good option. At the end of the day, it might also just be take the best offensive lineman available. And at this point in the draft, it might be Will Campbell. It might be Armand Membu from Missouri, or whoever else they think is the best possible offensive lineman available. So, I think it's running back, it's corner/safety, and then it's offensive lineman for that first-round pick. But throughout the rest of the draft, I mean, they do have some other positions that you want to see addressed as well. You want to see them address the wide receiver spot. You want to see them address the defensive line to just add more youth. You want to see them address linebacker as well. So it's not like it's only a few positions and then the Raiders are just going to be the best team in the AFC West. There are some other holes that should get addressed from the draft, but it's those few glaring weaknesses that you really want to see addressed in the first round. Overall, for the free agency period this year for the Las Vegas Raiders, I think a solid B- is warranted. You don't have really moves that make a ton of sense to me. I'm never going to be in love with trading for Geno Smith, even if it was only for a third-round pick. I'm never going to be in love with a move like that. I think you lose really good, really young, talented players on your defensive side of the ball, like Trayvon Merrick, like Nate Hobbs, who even though you replace with guys like Jeremy Chin and Eric Stokes, I think you get markedly worse at those positions. And I think that some of the other moves, like getting a guy like Alex Kappa, who's going to be your starting guard/center, he was one of the worst offensive linemen, not just in last year's season, in like the last half decade. Alex Kappa was one of the worst offensive linemen. But they do still make some other good moves with their extensions, with their other signings that they made that I highlighted. A B-, I think, is a pretty good grade for them.